Buenos dias, buenos dias, buenos dias. Before we even get into this conversation, let me get a sip of this mushroom slash coffee. So good. So today I wanted to share about um this guy named Daniel. This guy named Daniel comes out of the Bible. He's not a popular person. Well, if you are Bible a Bible student, or you know you'll be very familiar with this prophet, right? And in this book of Daniel, it's not that many chapters. I think it's like 10 or 12 chapters if I remember. But he has a very powerful story. But like I said, to the average person, a lot of people don't know about Daniel, right? People who might just go to church on Sunday and just hear the pastor talk, or a person that goes to Catholic mass and hear the priest does his thing, but they don't know these kind of stories. It's very unfamiliar to a regular day-to-day person. And the book of Daniel always used to catch my attention a long time ago. Well, a lot of these prophets in the Old Testament. So this guy Daniel is from the Old Testament, meaning it was before Jesus and came on earth, right? This is Old Testament. There's a New Testament and Old Testament. So Daniel's from the Old Testament, and he's a prophet. And what I wanted to share about Daniel was his diet. So it's called the Daniel's diet. So what's so interesting about his diet that always caught my attention, right? Was that I read it many years ago when I was a a Bible student in the past, when I used to read and study biblically every single day, which I still read, but not as much as I did in the past when I was in my early 20s, when I first came to Christ. But it's about Daniel, right? And it's about Daniel's diet, and how this diet uh, was shown back in biblical times that it was a healthy and great diet. And this Daniel's diet was known as um, what's called today the plant-based diet, right? So let me share a little bit about Daniel's history. I'm not gonna go in too much of his history. I mean, there will be other times when I do vlog. I'll vlog about other situations with Daniel's incident that he had during those times. Remember, Daniel was a slave. He was an Israelite, and he was a slave. So this is the Babylonians, I think, and I think the king was King Nebuchadnezzar, right? They had all these Israelites as slaves, and so when Daniel got captured, I think he was from the tribe of Judah. I'm not too sure. You know what I mean? I'm not a scholar. I read it many a times, but I read it a little bit of this morning just to refresh my memory, because I was reading about his diet, right? So Daniel was not only a man who knew his food, he was a man of God, and he was big on fasting and prayer, right? Which mostly all men of God was, but Daniel's was very capturing, because as me, into fitness and healthy nutrition, and I'm plant-based, that was literally a plant-based diet, what he did, right? So when Daniel and his men and his homeboys, right, him and his homies, right, when they got captured, the king requested 4 Israelites to come to uh to come to his table or whatever, right? I don't know. They wanted to use them or do an experiment on them, and something like that. I forgot what it was, what the experiment, what the king wanted. But when the king brings people into his presence or whatever, when they're called for, the king can either treat you bad or treat you good. So, and I think he knew about Daniel and his homies, and I'm very sure that they knew that they were men of God. that they knew the word, they knew the laws of God. So he wanted, even though that they were slaves, he wanted these kind of men around him, right? So before they went into the king's presence, the king told his men, like, hey, take care of these guys. Make sure they eat what we eat. And in those times, it was royalty food. And this royalty food was different than what slaves would eat. Which slaves back then would eat very cheap food, but it was nutritious. It was grains. It was grains, and it was vegetables and stuff that what it's like today, what we might consider a healthy diet. Those were slaves' food, because people who ate meat, who ate chicken, beef, pork, fish, it was people of power, people with money. So those were called royalty food, right? I remember when I heard this album from Nas, right? I never really heard the album, but I heard the name of the album. It was called King's Disease. And King's Disease, what he was talking about, that only these kings had diseases because of the diet that they were eating, which was the pork, the beef, the chicken. Their diet was a high diet in like a protein diet, which is a meat diet, right? Like a carnivore diet. And only these kings was being exposed as having all these kind of diseases. And it's common history. It's a known fact. And not only in biblical times, even going beyond biblical times, kings was having these diseases where they couldn't, at first I think they couldn't figure out why these kings was getting sick, but then they eventually started noticing that it was coming from the food, which mostly, I don't know, 80% of diseases is caused by food, or maybe even more, right? So let's get back to Daniel's diet. So Daniel's diet, right? So when he got into the king's presence, or of his men, and they came with all these meat, and Daniel said, nah. He told the king's guards, like, hey, I don't want none of this meat. Because the thing was, and in his mind, the reason why he didn't want the meat, because at those times I think the Israelites, one, they didn't eat pork, right? It was a forbidden food. But two, as much as that he don't eat the pork and stuff like that, he knew that these food was offered to idols. So he was like, nah, I stand on he knew he stand in a belief where he's not gonna eat certain food. As much as he knew he was a slave, where he knew how good it looks, how good it tastes, but he knew he didn't have to eat it, because one, he was respecting God, right? He was respecting the Lord in his character and his commitment and dedication, that he's a Jewish man that stands on the beliefs of what God has for his people, or people who honor his laws and stuff like that. So Daniel was like, he told the guards, he said, hey, you know what? I don't want those meat. I don't want none of that. Just give me wine. No, I'm sorry. Just give me water and vegetables, because they try to give him wine and meat. And he was like, nah, give me that. Give me my diet. And the guards was like, hey, nah, man. When you come here in the palace, or wherever they was, in the presence of the king, this is the kind of food you gotta eat. And he was like, nah, I'm not eating that. And he goes, man, you can't live off vegetables and water, man. Either you're gonna look sick, or you might even die. And then Daniel told him, he said, you know what? Give me 10 days, and I'm gonna show you. Give me and four of my homeboys, because there was four of them that went in the presence of their palace, right? Or in the presence of the king at the time, because the king wanted these educated men of Israel, even though they were slaves. Now I remember. Now it's coming back to me. So the reason why the king brought them in their presence was he wanted to change. Not only he wanted educated men, but he wanted to change their lifestyle, their culture, and teach them the ways of the Babylonians, right? Of what they knew. So he wanted to change their religion, their beliefs, but Daniel and his homies was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna do that. I don't mind respecting your culture, but there's things that it's not gonna go against what I believe in, which is like praying to idols and stuff like that. So when he told them about the vegetable and the water, he said, give me 10 days. And the other people that you have there that eats meat and that is eating the royal food, the royal diet or whatever you want to call, let's see that. Like how we look in 10 days and how they look in 10 days. So the guards or whoever they were that worked for the king, which was King Nebuchadnezzar, was like, they were scared. They was like, man, you got to eat this, because if you don't eat this and you come out looking weak and frail and maybe in their mind lack, what we call today lack of protein, the king is going to be upset with me because he wants you guys well nurtured, well taken care of through nutrition, right? Like you want to look good and healthy through nutrition, which he was thinking it was going to come to protein, animal food. And Daniel was like, no, give me 10 days. So Daniel and his boys, right? So they went on this diet, which it's not a diet, right? It's a lifestyle. But so they did this 10 days just to show them that, hey, we could live off vegetables and water. If we look unhealthy, then whatever, right? So in 10 days, they would come back and they pulled them out and they seen that not only that they look normal, they look beyond normal. They look healthier than the other men that was eating the meat, the beef, the pork, the chicken. And they were surprised. And those guys told the king, hey, man, we're going to be honest, man. These men requested only vegetable and water. And they look much more healthier than these other guys that you have here is just eating meat, which is eating our royal food. So the king was impressed. And he was impressed of Daniel's diet. What I'm trying to say here is that how a plant-based diet or a healthy diet like that with vegetables been around for a while. So when people try to say that this plant-based diet is new, it's not. It's nothing new. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, when I already knew that it was part of history that only rich people was able to eat animal food, right? Because only people with money or royalty people could afford it. But in those times, Daniel exposed them that those were not the food that will keep you healthy. One, Daniel knew it was because of God. Like always, reverence to God first before anything, right? Because, in those times, I'm very sure on special occasions, say, they was able to eat some kind of meat or be treated, and I don't think they would deny it, say maybe like beef or something like that, because they wouldn't eat pork. But Daniel exposed them by showing them that on a plant-based diet, that they would look stronger and healthier. And which he did. And this is a biblical story, and it's a history. And that's just a small part of Daniel's story, which was his diet. And I wanted to share that diet, how a plant-based diet always been, it always was beneficial to a person's health, and it can show you in 10 days, right? To me, the way he did it, showing 10 days of just vegetables and water, I consider that more was like a fast to vegetables. He was cleaning himself out, cleaning his digestive system, whatever, maybe, I don't know, but I know that plant-based diet that he shared with them, which is vegetable and water, showed them that not only was a cleansing process, but it was a healthier process. He was showing them like, dude, I don't have to feel good and eat your meat and be in your presence because So you think that if you feed me these meats or this chicken and this beef, I'm gonna start doing the things that you want me to do. Follow your type of lifestyle, which is, things that go against God. So it's the same thing in today, right? People try to tempt us with bad lifestyles or bad habits. It could be very tempting, right? And it's symbolic with how he did that with his diet, that people might seem tempting of showing you something, which this was through chicken, beef, and pork. But Daniel, he showed his diet like, man, I'm gonna look stronger, look better, look younger, look healthier. So, and he did that, and he exposed the royal diet or the royal food, that it was a bad way of eating. Not only it was a bad way, but not in that way, but he showed them that I could live off a plant-based diet. I could do it. Like, all I need is vegetables and water. Which today people think it's not a nutritionist diet, or it's not helpful, or whatever it is. But yeah, that was a short little vlog that I want to talk about Daniel's diet, right? Daniel's diet was a 10-day diet that he exposed them of strictly vegetables and water. But I'm very sure um uh after that 10 days he probably went into eat what he could, you know what I mean? Not meaning eat what he could, but he still continued that diet. And I'm very sure when he came around, and if he knew that those food wasn't offered to idols, and it was certain kind of meat that wasn't like pork, he probably would have ate it. Maybe if it was like I think it was goat or whatever kind of animals that they would eat, right? Goat or lamb. I'm sorry, if it was just like lamb and stuff like that, lamb and fish, he probably ate it, right? Maybe days later, but he showed them like, dude, I could live off vegetables and water. So that was my vlog today that I wanted to share about the book of Daniel, how he exposed the king of a plant-based diet, that he could live and survive off that plant-based diet. So, I wanted to share that story was in my head for like since yesterday. So that was my vlog for today about Daniel's diet. You can find it in the Bible if you want to read his story. It's a very great story. Like I said, it's either 10 to 12 chapters, might be 10 or 12, something like that. And he has more an excitement into that story besides his diet, of how he was thrown in a den of lions and the lions didn't even touch him. His homeboys was thrown in a furnace of fire and the fire didn't burn them. So it's a real good story. Some days I will talk more about Daniel, but I just wanted to touch up about Daniel's diet, how that plant-based diet exposed the king's royal food, that diet was more healthier than the royal food, right? So I hope you guys like this video. Something that I want to vlog, look forward to vlog every day, not only about my fitness and my cooking and everything else. I always want to add things that I know about biblically, which I'm a student of, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. So I want to share more stories that I know from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And I'm not only going to talk about characters from the Bible or prophets. I'm going to talk about topics like forgiveness and prayer and stuff like that. So stay tuned. Hope you guys like this video. Make sure you like, subscribe. If there's anything that I miss out of Daniel's diet and comment. And I'll see you on the next one.